Hi, I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thanks for streaming with us. The fate of Sean Diddy Combs could be in the hands of a jury exactly 1 week from tonight. The hip-hop mogul faces life in prison if convicted in the racketeering and sex trafficking trial. Combs has denied all allegations and claims any sex was consensual. Tonight, federal prosecutors releasing new photos of evidence. Dozens of photos taken during last year's raid of Combs' LA mansion showing mass amounts of baby oil, several weapons in a gun safe, body armor, and drugs. Today, the jury hearing from Combs' former assistant and former Syracuse basketball player Brendan Paul. He testified under immunity, telling the jury when he was hired, Combs told him to break up with his girlfriend and be prepared not to see his family. Paul saying Combs doesn't take no for an answer, explaining Combs wanted them on the move like SEAL Team 6, a highly secretive and elite Navy SEAL unit. Now, coming up, after hearing from multiple former assistants in this trial, what is that kind of job like? We'll take you inside the life of one, the demands, the schedule, and what's really expected. But we begin with ABC News Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Katersky. Aaron's been in the courtroom throughout this trial. He joins us now live outside the courthouse there in Manhattan. And Aaron, court was back for a shortened day after 2 days off. The judge started with some updates. What did he say?
Primarily, he said that he was going to keep a juror on the jury, and there had been some debate about that. A couple of sealed courtrooms in order to discuss an issue of communications. Apparently, this juror had communicated about his jury service with somebody else. That's not allowed. And when word got out about it, the judge was upset, Eva, because he believes somebody, either from the prosecution or defense team, leaked it. Said someone's lying because the courtroom was sealed when the defense and prosecutors said they didn't know how word got out. But the judge said that he was going to keep that juror on the panel, so that juror will be included in deliberations. And then prosecutors called their last 2 witnesses.
All right, let's talk about what we heard on the stand today. Brendan Paul, the former Syracuse basketball player, a former assistant to Sean Combs. He began his testimony by explaining some rules that he was given when he began working for Combs. Talk to us about these rules.
Well, he had to be available, and one of the other assistants advised him to break up with his girlfriend and be prepared not to ever see his family because the job was so demanding. He once testified that he went 3 straight days without sleep, and he also testified that to stay awake, he used cocaine sometimes and prescription Adderall. And before he took the job, the only thing he had done in terms of illicit drugs was smoke some marijuana. He also testified, Eva, that part of his job was to procure drugs for Sean Combs. This goes right to one of the predicate acts of the racketeering conspiracy charge. He said that every month he would buy, or every 2 months, he would buy a pound of marijuana, 2 different strains that Combs liked. He was also made to procure a powdery mix of ketamine and Molly called Tusi that was dyed pink, he said, for the aesthetic.
And what did he say about his role when it came to Wild King nights?
He was made to set up hotel rooms for these things. Cassie called them freak-offs. Jane called them hotel nights. The assistants, like Paul, knew them as Wild King nights. And he stocked the hotel rooms with the supplies the jury now is familiar with, the baby oil, the Astroglide, the lights that cast the reddish hue. And he said he would have to clean up after those nights, and the jury today saw some bills for damages that Combs incurred. $1,200 for sheets that were soaked with baby oil, $1,800 for a carpet that was stained with baby oil. Brendan Paul, though, said something on cross-examination too, Eva, and that is that he never knew Jane to be hesitant or apprehensive about participating, helping perhaps the defense make the argument that she was not a victim of sex trafficking and that all the sex was consensual, as Combs has argued.
Brendan Paul was arrested in March of last year for cocaine possession. What did he say happened that day?
He was on board a private plane with Sean Combs and his chief of staff, Christina Coram. The jury actually saw a picture of the 3 of them on board the private plane, the small cabin, luggage stacked in the back. He said they were off to the Bahamas. This was March 2024, right around the time Combs' home in Miami and also his mansion in Los Angeles were searched. And one of the things that he had on him at the time was cocaine. And it was in a Goyard bag, and he was asked, was the cocaine yours? And he said no. And he said, well, whose was it? The prosecutor said, Mr. Combs. Did you tell law enforcement that? No, he said, out of loyalty. Later, though, he did concede that the cocaine was Combs's. He ultimately had those charges dropped as part of a diversion program, and he's testifying as part of an immunity deal.
The last witness who took the stand today for the prosecution was a Homeland Security agent. This is going to be the last witness for them in general. What did he show the jury?
He showed reams of money transfers, hotel invoices, travel records. This was all to help the prosecutors do two things. One, establish the transportation for the purposes of prostitution, because he showed the jury all the arrangements for the male escorts that participated in hotel nights with Jane. There were 45 of them between 2021 and 2024, prosecutors said. And he also showed all the hotel invoices where these things took place. So that also goes to the idea of sex trafficking. As prosecutors see it, Jane was coerced into these things, and now the jury has a much rounder picture that Combs and his employees booked the travel, booked the hotels, stocked the rooms, as prosecutors have alleged all along.
Aaron Kontursky for us there at the courthouse. Aaron, thank you so much. Let's dig in more to today's testimony with ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer. You were in court today. Sean Combs' former assistant, Brendan Paul, we have to talk about him. He testified under immunity. He talked about that arrest for cocaine possession. It's kind of a big moment today.
Yeah, so March 2024, he gets arrested while on a plane with, as Aaron pointed out, Christina Coram and Sean Combs. But the details really, I think, help both sides, because Paul is meant to help the government with this predicate act of drug distribution, which is a predicate act of the RICO conspiracy. They only got approved too, and that there's a criminal enterprise, and then they get that RICO charge. But Paul was arrested with 0.7 grams of cocaine, and the defense really harped on not only the amount that he was arrested on, but also the amount that he gave to Sean Combs throughout that 18-month process that, as Brendan Paul put it, he believed it was for personal use, both in terms of the amount and how it was given to him. So is this distribution of narcotics, as the indictments suggest, or is this personal use drugs? The defense is going to argue one, the government argues the other.
Okay, Paul was named in a civil lawsuit by Rodney Lil Rod Jones that claimed that he worked as a mule for Combs, right? So he was asked about this during cross today. Combs has denied any of these allegations made against him in that civil lawsuit. What did he say about it?
So, lawsuit. Pictures within the lawsuit of Brendan Paul and Sean Combs together, the infamous pouch sometimes seen in this. And he was asked by Brian Steele in cross-examination, are you a drug mule? And Brendan Paul pushed back and said, no, I'm not a person who is moving kilos of drugs across state lines. What I did was I purchased about 5 to 10 times over the course of 18 months, drugs like many other assistants did for Sean Combs for his personal use. We were not a drug criminal enterprise. We were not distributing large amounts. He said very adamantly he is not a drug mule.
But he did talk about the Combs enterprise today on the stand. What do you take away from that?
It was somewhat of a bit of a sleight of hand by the government, asking if this was an enterprise, and Brendan Paul said yes. Don't forget, whether or not this is a criminal enterprise goes to that RICO conspiracy. But again, Brian Steele on cross-examination came back and said, when you say enterprise, do you mean a criminal enterprise, or do you mean an enterprise because the name of the company, the name of where you got money from was Combs Enterprise? And I said, yeah, it's Combs Enterprise. It's an enterprise, not a criminal enterprise. We're here for music, production, the arts, things of that nature. So the back and forth, I think, made it very interesting.
The special agent that's on the stand, the end of the day on the stand, is going to be back on the stand on Monday. The prosecution is expected to rest after that witness finishes. What do we know about the timeline for the defense?
So right now, what we're understanding is that it's Friday. The government will come back on Friday. Probably for the rest of the morning, they will be direct examining this special agent through more of the summary witness information, trying to connect Jane, not just through the trafficking, but also the intent to engage in prostitution across state lines. The defense believes that they'll finish cross-examining this witness by the afternoon. That means Tuesday. We expect for the defense to put on their witnesses, and they actually believe only about a day or two of witnesses. We could see both sides rest by Wednesday of next week. That means closing arguments on on Thursday, actually. Whether or not the judge gives the case to the jury on Friday to begin deliberating or Monday, I would expect, if you're thinking Thursday for closing arguments, following Thursday, maybe the following Thursday after that, July 3rd or so, we might have a verdict.
Brian Buckmeyer, I've got more questions about the defense's case when we come back, but still ahead here. The prosecution has one more day to finish making their case. Will Diddy take the stand? Our legal experts are going to weigh in on that when we return. Welcome back. It's time now to break down the legal strategies we saw playing out in court as the prosecution gets ready to rest its case against Sean Diddy Combs on Monday. Here with me, Brian Buckmeyer playing defense and Bernardo Villalona analyzing the prosecution. Bernardo, let's just get right into the Brendan Paul of it all. It seems like they were using him to try to show alleged criminal enterprise. Do you think they got the job done?
Yes, I think so. In terms of Brendan Paul, an employee of Combs Enterprise. As an employee of Combs Enterprise, aside from being the personal assistant of Sean Combs, he was also procuring drugs for Sean Combs. So you have an employee engaging and getting drugs for Sean Combs and also providing money to Sean Combs to pay off those escorts. So they were able to show that you have an employee for the enterprise and an employee that's engaging in criminal activity. So they were able to show it through Brendan Paul. Brendan Paul is also special because we've heard testimony of Sean Combs getting narcotics and giving narcotics out to other people. You heard that by word of mouth. But here you have corroboration in the sense that Brendan Paul was arrested with cocaine in his possession. So you have corroboration in the sense of physical evidence that's been shown to this jury.
You said earlier you think he kind of helped both sides a little bit. How so? Yeah,
so I think when it comes to this case, for RICO conspiracy, I think the predicate acts, they've lost. And if we're talking about drug distribution, I know most people, when they think about it, we were talking about just before we got on, drug distribution is not having large quantities of drugs. You could, theoretically, just give one little baggie to someone, and that would be distribution. But I think what the attack here is that there is no criminal enterprise, that this is a company that does music, entertainment, all that in the third, and people having loyalty to Sean Combs want to make sure that he is happy, that he's doing what he needs to do, that he is not moving at the direction of these individuals to have this criminal enterprise. Yes, are they getting drugs? Yes. Are they bribing for the video of the Intercontinental Hotel? But there's not that connective tissue of the criminal enterprise. And I think that's the argument here that they have.
The judge brought up this idea of the jury instructions today. This was, as a non-legal mind, very confusing for me. He wants the prosecutors to clarify the language on how to understand the drug predicate under the racketeering conspiracy charge. I mean, all of that sounds like jumbo to me. Bernardo, what does that even mean?
So interesting enough, the judge made a mention that if he was to put an emoji on this, it will be the mind-blowing emoji when it comes to these jury instruction. And of course, people in the courtroom started laughing. So I think in terms of the jury instruction, it's going to be difficult for anyone to follow. That's why summations are very crucial in explaining to this jury, number one, the instructions of what to do once they get into that deliberation room. Number two, what questions they should ask and what's the purpose of their deliberations. And then number three, break down very easily in terms of the racketeering conspiracy. First, was there an enterprise? That enterprise doesn't have to be solely for the purpose of criminal activity. It can also be for a legit purpose. Here you have it. Who are the employees that worked on this enterprise and engaged into criminal activity? Once you establish there's an enterprise, criminal activity, let's talk about the drugs. Each witness that has mentioned some form of drug, either possession or distribution, or giving it to Jane, or giving it to Cassie, or giving it to one of the escorts, or even giving it to Sean Combs. List that out for that jury, and then determine the actual facts and the summary charts and point it out for them. So once you got the enterprise, you got the criminal activity, what are the predicate acts? And just remember, they just have to prove two predicate acts. They got it for the drugs. They got it for the kidnapping. They got it for the arson. The forced labor, I don't think so. I think that's a far stretch in terms of forced labor. Look, everybody got to work. Everybody's making money. Everybody's learning. It's the industry. So I don't think they have it there.
I actually think Paul hurt them when it came to the forced labor because Paul was talking about he was a D1 athlete walk-on. And as an All-American myself, that a walk-on is amazing to me because that person works hard and busts their butt to get onto the Syracuse basketball team and play in the tournament. And now he took that work ethic and worked in Sean Combs' industry. And he said, yeah, it was difficult. I stayed up because we were putting out the Love problem, but I'm young. I can work this hard.
Exactly.
I think they'll actually use that to hurt the forced labor allegations with Capricorn Clark.
Yeah. I think the strongest forced labor probably would have been under Cassie in the sense of that she's doing more than just putting out music. You were also using her for sex. Again, I think it's a stretch. They just need 2 predicate acts. I would stick to the kidnapping, I would stick to the arson, and I would stick to the bribery. I gave you 3 options.
Can we talk about the Gina of it all, or the lack of Gina, the number 3 alleged victim that isn't going to be in court? Why not?
So I think there's been argument that from the prosecution allegations that they haven't been able to get in contact with her, which again is kind of fishy because as a former prosecutor, I had means to be able to get witnesses in the sense I could get a material witness order and I can send my detectives and NYPD to different states and actually put someone into custody and have them dragged into court and appear before the judge and have the judge hold them in custody until the time of their testimony because it can't be trusted that they won't appear at the time of the date. However, it's different if she's out of the country. If she's out of the country, then your grasp of getting a witness is much more difficult because out of the country, they don't have to honor your subpoena or your order. Again, the defense is probably going to argue missing witness in the sense of where's Gina? Because you haven't heard from Gina, that should establish reasonable doubt. Prosecution is going to say, in terms of the charges, Gina's not listed as a victim as to the sex trafficking or transportation to engage in prostitution, so it's not relevant for your deliberations.
I have to ask, Brian, do you think Diddy's going to take the stand, or is this a little bit of a hint that their case is going to be short, that he's not?
So if you're hearing from the defense that their case, they're expecting to begin witnesses one day and then potentially end the next day or the day after, Sean Combs doesn't testify. I don't think Sean Combs was ever going to testify in this case, but for his own ego. I think this is a case where you explain to your client, this isn't about what you know compared to what they know, what you thought or what you believed. No. If you put Sean Combs on the stand, 1, I don't know whether or not you can control or know what he's going to say next, or 2, you don't want the jury making it a case about, do I believe him? Or her, him, her, and her. No. You make it about the weaknesses of the government's case, and that's all.
It looks like it's shaping up to be a battle of the experts. The defense is obviously going to call experts. How do you play that out?
So this is, I think, a new age when it comes to sex crimes and trauma. Prior to Harvey Weinstein, we never really saw experts in this field. We often operated based on stereotypes or belief as to why did a victim or alleged victim not come forward earlier? Why did they not do this? Why did they react this way? Now I think we're getting into an area of law where you need experts, and it's going to be, okay, if this person did this, how can we determine whether or not that individual is an actual victim or they're just making it up? And I think you're going to see the defense put on a witness for the lion's share of their case to say what you heard from Dr. Hughes, the expert for the government, that's too wishy-washy. That doesn't make any sense. This is what the standing should follow, and that Cassie, especially, because I think she's the strongest alleged victim in this case, is not a victim at all. Jane, I think they might already have that case in the bag.
We have to talk about this motion for acquittal that the defense filed. Bernardo, do you think they're actually going to get that?
No, not at all. Not at all. When it comes to a motion for acquittal, it's up to the judge is going to say, like, look, there's enough sufficient facts here in terms of he's not determining the credibility of the witnesses, but as long as there's a prima facie case that meets the elements of the charges, he's going to let it go to the jury. It's standard practice for a motion of acquittal. I think here it's fact specific, and the jury is actually the judge of the facts, so it's going to go to the jury, all of these charges.
It's also very hard to win a motion of acquittal. The standard is in the light most favorable to the government. So you have to take all of the facts more favorable to them, and if those favorable facts are still true and correct, does it mean that these crimes never happened? That's a high burden and a high standard to get a hold of. The only time we saw that work out was in the Russ case when there were many, many legal issues there. This is not the case.
Brian, Bernardo, always so lovely to have you both. Thank you. Coming up, Combs's former personal assistant took the stand today, so we're going to take a look at what it's like to be a high-profile personal assistant when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Over the course of the high-profile trial against hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs, we've heard from several former assistants, including Brendan Paul, who testified today that there was an expectation to make sure Combs was happy. Former assistant Mia also told the jury it was impossible to tell Combs no, saying Puff's authority was above the police. Joining us now is Carrie's son. She spent more than 2 years as a personal assistant for a famous hedge fund billionaire in the Wall Street world. Thank you so much, Carrie, for being here with us. You're on the other side of this job now, but I'm curious, was it what you anticipated it would be? People are so curious. What was this job like?
It was both, exactly as I anticipated and so much more. So going in, I knew that my job would be to provide my boss with anything and everything to help him live his life and provide just all aspects, support in all aspects, and kind of go above and beyond to make the impossible happen for him. And I related a lot to the, you have to say yes. You're asked to do something. You have to respond instantly. You can't say no, and it's such an all-in, all-consuming, intense job. But I just didn't realize, in hindsight, maybe I probably should have, but I didn't realize exactly what that would entail. Because I think the problem with the role, as an assistant role as it's defined now, it is so nebulous. The job description is, okay, provide your boss with everything, but exactly what does that mean? When I started the job, to try to be very clear about what my role was, I started the job. My boss gave me a job description. It had nearly 100 bullet points of responsibilities. So I tried to just do those 100 bullet points of responsibilities, but some of those bullet points included, willingness to do anything and everything for him and for the company, willingness to put your boss and the company above yourself.
So what does that mean in real life? Like,
yes.
What kind of things were you asked to do?
Say you're say you are in the middle of something and it's Friday night and 11 p.m. and he calls and he needs something. You have to drop what you're doing, maybe get out of bed, go to a computer, VPN in. Maybe he's, in my case, it was asking for something financial or asking for, a private flight from here to there. You just have to get it up and do it. It could be, getting someone famous, a celebrity, on the phone immediately, and so I have to find connections who has that number and kind of get that person on the phone, or book vacations. It was a lot of the doing the impossible and making that happen.
What do you think of a personal assistant job now, from this side of it all?
Yes,
would you do it again?
I'm at a different stage in my life in which I think I'm unwilling to take on a job in which I lose myself. The reason why this kind of job, I think, is I think just structurally problematic is that there's such a large power imbalance between your boss and you. And while that might be expected, given the different levels of wealth and fame and all that, the massive power imbalance, I think all jobs, no matter what job, deserves protections. And I think assistants often don't have enough protections. I think people think that assistants going in should know that this is intense and grueling job. But I think even in that case, assistants deserve, some protections. And I think the problem is your reality is so warped when you're in kind of a near to power, to a boss who is famous and has a lot of money and has a lot of connections, and you quickly don't know left from right, up from down, and sometimes right from wrong.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Insight. And thank you for joining us. We'll be back with new episodes every day of the trial. The show streams right here on ABC News Live, Disney Plus, and Hulu weekdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. For even more on the Diddy trial, make sure to follow our podcast, Bad Rap, the case against Diddy. It's hosted by our very own Brian Buckmeyer, wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Eva Pilgrim in New York. Have a good weekend.